What's happening YouTube? Today you will be joining me for my first session back doing jerks after hurting my wrist. If you've been watching my videos here on the Animal Pack YouTube, you'll know that back in July I hurt my wrist the day before the British Championship. Long story short, I got knocked off my bike by a white van driver. As a result of this, I sprained my wrist, severely bruised my bone, and I think there was a grade 1 tear there as well. Needless to say that the pain I was feeling really got in my head and prevented me from doing very much overhead for quite a few months. I also suffer with carpal tunnel, and an injury like this causes quite a significant amount of inflammation and therefore triggered my carpal tunnel for a few weeks as well. But alas, I finally started feeling ready to throw some weights overhead again. Once I finished that work, I headed straight to the gym with my energy chews in hand, which you can see on the plyo box next to me, and got to warming up. I've been training for quite a long time, so I have somewhat of a set warm-up routine. What needs stretching, what needs activating, etc. This will obviously vary depending on how my body feels, if I have any recent injuries, if I've been sat down all day or stood up all day. But generally speaking, as you saw at the start, I'll spend quite a lot of time opening up my hips, stretching out my back and my hamstrings, and then I'll go on to doing glute activation. I actually have an underactive multifidus muscle, which is your posterior core muscle. So I do often struggle with lower back pain, which is why doing my glute activation work is so important, because it takes the strain off of my spinal erectors and my lower back and allows my glutes to do a lot more of the work. Having been training for 10 years now, I've really learnt the importance of listening to my body, spending a little bit longer than I would probably like, doing my warm-ups and my activation work. When I first started lifting, I was 18, 19 years old, and I could just walk into the gym and start throwing weights around. But that's not really how things work as you get closer to 30, and especially as you've accumulated lots of aches, pains, sprains and injuries. Like a lot of adults, I also work a 9 to 5, and I spend a long period of time sat down at my desk. As well as my glute activation work, I do core activation work before I start lifting as well. As you saw at the beginning, I also do thoracic stretching and chest openers. You really can't understate the importance of taking the time to prime your body and activate all of the areas that will be working when you're throwing heavy weights around during the Olympic lifts. I tend to find exercises that activate and prime multiple areas at once to be the most beneficial for me. And again, this just comes from experience and having listened to my own body, knowing what areas I need to work on and taking the time to do so. Speaking of priming exercises, unless I'm really short for time, I always prime my jerks with push press. Doesn't necessarily always need to be a heavy one, sometimes they can just be light push presses. The aim with the push press is to keep your chest up, absorb the weight with a nice straight back and drive the bar up as high as possible. So we're really emphasising the force production in the extension. We then look to replicate this when we go into the split jerk. As you can see, I take my time to reset between each rep because there is really no point rushing. I didn't really come into the session with much of a plan, and that was intentional. It's so easy to put pressure on ourselves to perform, to lift certain weights, to hit certain milestones. But the reality is, when you're coming back from an injury, it's more important to just get into the gym, find some consistency and find some rhythm. And more importantly, feel safe psychologically doing those movements. Now, you probably watched these reps and thought, yeah, they look absolutely fine. But the reality is, I was scared. There was a little bit of residual pain there, but not enough for me to feel like I had to stop. It's important to note that pain can sometimes be psychological, so we associate certain positions with pain we felt in the past. And again, this is not my first rodeo, so I knew that the pain I was feeling wasn't pain that I should be concerned about. The most important thing was to just get some weight on the bar and get some reps in the bank. This is the best way to teach my mind and body that these movements are safe. With every rep I do, my confidence builds. And as my confidence builds, I start to unlearn that pain association. Things were going really well. I was happy with how the bar was moving. Technically, jerks have always been one of my favourite movements, so I'm quietly confident in my ability. At this point, my body knew that this was a safe movement to do, so I got 85 kilos on the bar and decided to start pushing the weight a little bit more. I did 3 sets of doubles at 85, and then I went on to do 2 singles at 90. After my 90 kilo singles, I decided to give 95 a spin. I have to admit, 95 did feel heavy on my chest, and as someone who is pretty good at jerks, this did get into my head a little bit, I can't lie. In truth, jerks are quite a scary movement because you're essentially dipping with a really heavy weight on your chest, throwing it over your head and hoping for the best. So this was where I really had to dig deep, and as you can see here, I bottled that first rep. This is really where the athlete mindset and mental fortitude generally comes into play. I knew I was capable of doing it, I just had to get out of my own head. After having a little word with myself and pulling up my big girl pants, I went again. My elbows were a little bit soft in the receive, that's just where I was lacking a bit of confidence and aggression, but this is a huge milestone to overcome. I went on to do a few more singles at 95, and they were a little bit better, they're still soft overhead, but nonetheless this was a huge confidence boost. Having not done any jerks for months, to go from empty bar to 95 kilos, safe to say I was pretty happy with myself. Now all I need to do is make up the deficit of 25 kilos. Yeah, you heard that correct. My best jerk is 120. And whilst I did do that at my heaviest and most fittest, that is my goal. My goal is to get back to jerking 120. Stay tuned. Of course, no session is complete without accessories, and I know so many of you out there love to skip your accessories, but they really, really are important. I was at this point running out of time, it was getting late, and I was really hungry, so I decided to superset my bent over rows with my pull-ups, and yeah, safe to say, my arms were cooked. Safe to say, I was absolutely cooked by this point. So the lesson we learned today is, your body is capable of anything, it's your mind you have to convince.